Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 8 of GBBC's educational webinar series, Not All Blockchains Are the Same. I'm Jackson Ross, Director of Technical Programs and Head of Interwork Alliance at Global Blockchain Business Council. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. For those of you joining us for the first time, this is a closed-door event exclusively for regulators, government agencies, and international standards organizations. The focus of these sessions is to bring clarity to the world of blockchain by focusing on the unique aspects and practical applications of different technologies. Designed to move beyond the hype, this series offers an in-depth look at Layer 1 blockchains, highlighting their development, distinctive features, use cases, and potential for compliance. Here's how today's session will run. For the first half, our presenter will lead the discussion. This portion will be recorded for posterity and learning purposes. Afterwards, we will stop the recording to allow for an open, off-the-record Q&A session. This is a space for you as public servants to ask questions freely and foster candid dialogue. In today's episode, we will explore the Filecoin network, the world's largest decentralized storage network, built to keep data verifiable and free from centralized control. Filecoin Foundation's mission is to preserve humanity's most important information, from cultural archives and scientific research to AI datasets and decentralized apps. Petabytes of data are already stored on Filecoin for greater resilience and verifiability. We are thrilled to be joined today by Danny O'Brien, Senior Fellow in DWeb Strategy at the Filecoin Foundation and the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web. Danny has been a tech journalist, developer, and activist for online free speech, privacy, and an open internet for over 20 years, including a decade at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. His work within the technology sector has included being a founding employee at the Virgin Brands ISP, Virgin Net. As a journalist, he served as Silicon Valley correspondent for the London Sunday Times and the Irish Times, and defended reporters globally from online harassment and cyber attacks at the Committee to Protect Journalists. Danny, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks to everyone for coming today. As you can tell from that introduction, and perhaps from my graying beard, a bit of an old feature of the internet. I've been through Web 0, I guess, Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3. There's a pattern going through all of that, which I hope I'll be able to paint for you about the internet and digital communications technologies' effect on society, both good and bad, and some of the arcs that we've seen throughout all of that. My intention here is not only to explain to you a little bit about Filecoin, but also to contextualize that, to describe how what we're trying to do at Filecoin is in many ways a reaction to some of the uh, uh, more troubling developments in the last decade or so of international digital communications and storage. And hopefully we can talk about both how Filecoin and related technologies can help to mitigate or perhaps return us to some of the hope and excitement of the early years when I had, not even sure I had a beard at all. All right, so Filecoin, decentralized storage and the future of the internet. Uh, I wonder if anybody can tell me, don't worry, this is a rhetorical question, what all of these companies and organizations and institutions from McDonald's to the Bank of Scotland to gov.uk, organization I was somewhat tangentially connected to, have in common. Well, they were all affected by at least one, perhaps more, of the outages that you might have seen in the headlines recently. And if you didn't see them in the headlines, it's probably because you couldn't access these websites. In the last few months, we've seen Amazon, Azure, Microsoft's similar cloud service, and Cloudflare, the sort of proxy, the front end in front of many of these services, go down, and with it, some core infrastructure that I think we've all come to rely on. The internet is at least occasionally broken for everyone, and the rest of the time it's broken in other, perhaps deeper ways. The cloud infrastructure that we've described there is now about 62% of the key websites. But it's not just about monopolistic economic control. The internet is not even showing its age. The median lifespan of a web page, 2.3 years. Web pages are continually disappearing. The number of dead links in the New York Times articles, if you look at the archive as a whole, is a quarter. If that doesn't give you some worry about understanding the context behind the news, think of things like court judgments. Court judgments frequently now cite not to previous laws, but to URLs, to web addresses, to links. And if you click on those links in older decisions or even quite modern decisions, a Supreme Court in the United States decision, you'll find it goes to a 404 page not found error. Why is this? Well, this is an old and perhaps to some of you familiar diagram. This comes from the very, very earliest days of the internet in the original memo that launched 1,000 clicks, the DARPA memo in 1968, perhaps. Um, and what we see here is sort of basically three models of potentially outlining how digital infrastructure could be designed. The one in the middle is sort of the design that they settled on for the internet in the end. As you can see, you have a few nodes, a few peers, as it were, and people connect to those. So if you imagine you're one of those ones on the very outer edges and one of those little sort of spurs, spokes going in, you're visiting perhaps this website or the UK Guardian or Google. Right? And each node is connecting to that particular website. The hope, actually, and the original plan with the internet was to head much more to the diagram on your right. That's a distributed internet. That's where the nodes sort of shore themselves up. So if a connection doesn't quite work, a direct connection doesn't quite work to those websites or other servers, you can borrow from your friends. You can connect resiliently to those sites via other peers in the network where we're all effectively equals. The reason why you'd want to pick either of those two models is because it is resilient. It's designed to not only sort of defend from breakages in the internet, it's also flexible. One of the reasons why the internet grew at the speed that it did is because you didn't have to have a central organized control. The nodes could grow as they will. And that's how the internet spread so quickly from this experimental academic and military network to embrace the whole of the world, the whole of the world's economy, and all of the world's communications. All of these are an attempt to avoid the errors of the diagram on the left, which is where you have centralized command and control, a central node or nodes that everybody has to go through. And to cut a long story short, we thought we moved to the right, and in fact, we moved to the left. That little star in the middle is the large big tech quasi-monopolistic or at least oligopolistic systems that we have right now. There was a lot of pressure to go to the right. We can sort of dabble in kind of the economic and technical things that led to this shift to the left, but it's not how the internet was designed, and also not really how or why we wanted to build a resilient global internet. There was a conscious design decision here that became a political, in some ways, ethical decision to make an internet that was, in the words of Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the World Wide Web, for and by everyone. That's not a model that you see very often in the modern network. Filecoin's a foundational technology for what we hope will be the next generation of the web. A lot of talk a few years ago about Web3, but there really is a kind of line through this and previous technologies. There's always been an attempt to hit that window of I mean, perhaps it's an exaggeration to say the people's internet, but certainly an internet that is equally and equitably shared between everyone and is a group endeavor rather than something that is controlled and has its value extracted by just a few. Um, the project's been going for quite some time. I certainly first encountered it in 2013 when I was beginning to work on how we could fix these problems at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And one of the bases of it is content addressability. Hopefully, this is the most technical I will get in this. I occasionally throw up a few technical diagrams, but trust me, if you can get this idea, you'll get everything else. Content addressability is basically a way by which you can find resources on the internet, not by knowing who owns them or who controls them, but what they are. So if you were looking for this video, um, usually you might go to YouTube, right? Somebody might send you a URL and it will be youtube.com/incomprehensible set of letters. Um, the problem with that is you're already caught in this centralized system, right? As you probably know, it's very hard to see videos these days that aren't on YouTube. And that's because people upload it to YouTube. It's very easy. And then they send you that URL. And that URL says, go straight to YouTube. Do not stop. Do not collect $200. Do not go past go. So that's one of the core problems, right? Every web address has an advertisement. Every web address compounds those network effects that lock people in. And if you want to move from YouTube, all the links break. If YouTube or another site goes down, all the links break. If YouTube decides to throw you off for some reason, because either Google doesn't like what you're doing, or perhaps a government that is in the able to influence Google decides that that's not content to see, the links break down. Content traceability is a way by which you can say, I want this particular video. I want this thing. I don't care where it is. I don't care who's storing it. I don't care where it was originally stored. I just want to find this. It's a technical innovation that we've known for quite some time. I think if we were going to build the web from scratch, we would probably have put this into the original system. And IPFS, the ground technology for Filecoin, is an attempt to do that for storage. So when I talk about videos, bits and bytes, that's how you find those files, as it says in the name. One of the challenges that we had in the original internet was incentive and economic models. The reason why the Facebooks and the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons grew to the size they had was they had a lot of capital, but also it was very hard to come up with an economic model which would suit a more generalized internet. Um, if you don't care where somewhere is stored, then it's quite hard to incentivize people to provide that storage service unless they're sure that they're getting paid or unless they know that there's some initial investment that they're going to get. Filecoin took some of the economics of the blockchain space and turn that as an incentive system for storage. And just to be clear here, one of the things that makes this not your usual blockchain is this isn't a harder financial play. It's not decentralized finance. It's very much the system has been engineered as a series of incentives to encourage to make people's storage available for content address data that end customers will use and often don't care about the economics or the coins or the crypto economic basis for this. This is a business or customer system that presents itself as storage, not some blockchain play in itself. Let me spend a couple of minutes talking about how Filecoin works. Promise you I wasn't going to get technical. I should live with that. I think the main thing that you should know here is that the data is stored in this decentralized, distributed way. You don't store with Google, you don't store with Amazon, you store with a vast array of individual and independent storage providers across the whole of the world. Um, how can you trust them? The way you trust them, and we'll touch a little bit on this, is the same way as other blockchain systems are built, mathematical proofs. So the innovation in Filecoin was a series of proofs. You may have heard of proof of stake or proof of work for other blockchains. We use proofs that are simultaneously a proof that these storage providers who sort of map roughly to miners in other blockchains are committing to the network, are actually their resources are real. They're not a mystery, and also they are actually storing your data. And in return for doing both of those services, they receive payments from their end customer. Hopefully, the service is good enough for them to want to pay for it. But also, certainly in the early days of the network, as we stir in, token incentives. So the storage providers say, "Hey, I'm making this storage available for anybody who wants to store it," and they get rewards from that. It's a global storage provider network. We started in 2020, late 2020, very quickly under those incentive systems, created an exabyte level network of storage. That's broadly comparable to the early years of Amazon. It's certainly more storage than currently the system needs. There's plenty of future-proofed storage there. We have about 2 petabytes of data onboarded every day. And in terms of resilience, in terms of having a choice of where you store that data, and an open and free market, competitive market, because each of these storage providers are offering their own discounted prices to users. We're doing pretty well. We have storage providers all around the world. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about data verifiability because this is a sort of a second order effect of the internet that we found ourselves in. One of the things that I know is a concern for people these days, and experience it myself in this age of generative AI and coordinated attacks on the truth, something I definitely experienced in my time at EFF, working in the political space and then the Committee to Protect Journalists, is how do you prove data? Now, we have a system that relies, if you think back to that original network diagram, on that kind of centralized verification, right? You're going to YouTube, therefore you're sort of trusting YouTube to say, yeah, this is legit, or I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. I've taken that data away and you can't see it anymore. It's a very cumbersome system. It is a little harder in a decentralized and distributed way in some ways. That move to centralized control was partly because people were looking for trust and safety in a trustless network. Again, we don't really rely on those central authorities so much as the mathematic proofs. Content addressability means that when you ask for a particular file, you get that file and nothing but that file. It's like you've given a description of exactly what you want, and you can check that you receive what you looked for. Proof of space-time, proof of replication, proof of data possession. These are these cryptographic or crypto-economic proofs. They're basically saying either this data really is stored, it's really stored in multiple places. You can be sure it's kept being stored. Um, but that also comes with a provenance guarantee here. And without, again, delving too deeply into the technical details, we can build on this assurance system to verify and provide some statements about the nature of the data that's being stored that you can't necessarily make the same assurances about if you're just visiting a traditional website or retrieving data from a traditional storage system. Under those kind of conditions, unless you build content addressability and these sort of proofs on top of it, you have to take Google or Amazon's word for it when you ask for the data you originally got, or you go looking for that data. Okay, I'm running a little bit long. I tend to get a bit excited about the ground proof here without going into some of the commercial applications of this, but let me talk a little bit about that. Filecoin is one of the OG decentralized physical infrastructure networks, this term DePIN. It's basically the bit of blockchain that really set about building out something that isn't about finance or the cryptocurrency part of that technology. We're in very good company here. And one of the features about this is that you can we provide that storage primitive, but from that storage primitive, you can start building more complicated computation and physical infrastructure systems that mean that all of them have this level of redundancy and resiliency and independence from these centrally controlled digital infrastructure players. Let's talk about the real world use cases. As I said, we launched in 2020. Since then, we've been with many partners building out practical applications for this sort of technology. I think some of the stuff that excites me the most, again, I'm sorry if I'm not the most commercial person here. I come from a sort of government and public sector environment, is long-term reliable storage. If you've ever used the Wayback Machine to know how things were, to try and retrieve your own website or some of those broken links, you'll know the Internet Archive. It's a fine internet institution. We've been working with the Internet Archive to decentralize their huge repository of the historical archive of the internet. And because there's only one Internet Archive, it's about 10 miles in that direction. I'm talking to you from San Francisco, and we're in an earthquake zone. So moving it out to all of these different countries, providing redundant backups is a long-term project that we've been investing a lot of blood, sweat, and tears with the Internet Archive. We've also been working with other governments who in turn rely on the Internet Archive's storage capabilities to provide either backups or easy access to the public data they create. One of the areas that we're trying to help decentralize is a repository of the Internet Archive's data in Canada. We've also been working with countries all around the world, including Aruba, to store their data independently on Filecoin, as well as the Internet Archive to protect against natural disaster in their own nations. We also work with the UN Food Program. They have an excellent project coordinated by the Global Blockchain Business Council. This is how we use some of the trust and verification and authenticity systems to build decentralized storage into their distribution network. Cultural preservation, also really important. We've worked with Smithsonian Institution. If any of you have used Flickr, Flickr was a Web 2.0 company, still is actually, that ended up being the repository for a lot of the photographic archives of many public and private sector companies. It's still run as a private concern, but we've helped support a non-profit to ensure that even if that private company goes away, those archives are preserved for all mankind into the future. Same with many other important document repositories. Human rights, I'd love to talk a little bit more with you actually about how human rights and civil liberties intersect with digital technologies. I think it's something that's really important to bear in mind when developing regulations in this space. I think it's very easy to create a regulation with very good and positive intent that can have knock-on effects for privacy, freedom of association, freedom of expression. While we've seen effects of technology that have really hammered on those basic and fundamental principles, there are also many, many opportunities for modern technology to actually shore that up. And we've thought a lot about how to encode civil liberties into the basic protocols of what we're trying to do. Starling Labs, part of that, we work very closely and were instrumental in setting up or helping set up this Stanford and USC project. We use again some of that authenticity proofs, these blockchain recorded timestamps as they were of data to preserve in their original form evidence of war crimes and not only historical information. The US Shoah Foundation stores historical records of many genocides in time and space, but also the data that is generated in the fog of modern war, and keeping that for future truth and reconciliation. We work with artists, transfer data trust. If all you've heard of sort of blockchain and art is NFTs, I really encourage you to look up the transfer data trust. This is a way by which we've helped digital artists of all kinds to keep ownership or sovereignty over their data. As you can imagine, modern digital art is vast in its data usage, and it's very easy to just hand that over without preserving the control for the original artists. This is one of my favorite projects. It's harder to explain, but I kind of insisted we put it in. Scientific and academic data. We store geospatial location data. We store open access course materials from MIT Open Learning. So that's distributed over the whole world. Hundreds of thousands of people use MIT's openly licensed courseware. This puts it closer to them and takes the load off MIT's servers. All of this is essentially big data. You may remember that I talked about the exabytes of data that we have available, the petabytes of onboarding capability we have. All of that is very competitively priced because we have this free and open market between our storage providers, and that's something that's incredibly useful in the academic and public sector space, right? It's probably not your first port of call if you're storing data, but it provides again this incredibly resilient backup right now. Big data brings us very naturally to artificial intelligence. We're able to store collections of data that AI draws upon, public domain data primarily, like the end of term crawl, which is all public government data, also the common crawl, which is a publicly available repository of web data. If you can imagine it, it's sort of like if the Wayback Machine is an archive of the history of the internet, Common Crawl is a snapshot of the way it looks there. That means we can make it tamper-proof. We can provide it not just for big companies who have a head start in creating AI models because they've been collecting this data and they have an incentive not only to keep it for themselves, but to increasingly scrape, borrow, and I won't use the term steal, but certainly delve deep into more data than perhaps we realize that they're taking from us. Um, this has led, I think, to a sort of mini boom in our space. We've been building these decentralized and distributed AI systems that rely on that data and also build out on compute. We're fairly confident that we can apply this decentralized and decentralizing methodology to incentivize compute in the sense of all those GPUs that you hear in the news being distributed and economically usable by a wider range of companies and businesses rather than them going to OpenAI, Anthropic, or some of the usual suspects, Google's, Apple, Amazon. It's really important in the same way as that when the internet was first designed, that it was designed in this decentralized way, not only for resilience, not only for ensuring that it can survive in the rough and tumble of the real world, um, but as I said, for civil liberties and human rights reasons. If you cede control of your digital life to a handful of companies, that's really putting your life in their hands. And what we're really trying to do here is build an infrastructure that returns us to the original idea of the internet, which was an internet of peers, right? Where I run and control the models that I use. I share data under my control. And what we experience with the internet is not one of this constant anxiety of what am I losing, what is being taken from me, what is going on behind the scenes that is deciding what I see and what I'm being told, but that I have autonomy in what I choose and control over what I release. So Filecoin is really a system that uses crypto economics to provide that flat and open market for storage providers, so that customers and clients can use that. Our real hope is to make that a fundamental primitive of a wider decentralized web where everything that you use has that feel that you're participating in an open and free market and you get to choose what resources you are. There are zero switching costs from moving to one of those things. And also you can control and choose where that data is stored and what that compute is where that compute is. I won't jump back a few slides and show you that global map, but one of the things that we can guarantee here is that if you want your data stored in your own country, or perhaps you have regulatory or statutory reasons to do that, you can do that, and hopefully you can use this proof system to help guarantee that that's the case. All right, well, let's still have a few minutes to talk. The next phase of Filecoin, I've talked about where we sort of are right now, which, like everybody else, we're somewhat caught up in the AI hype, but we're still building out those fundamental primitives. Um, if you think about the early days of Amazon's pivot to providing this ground infrastructure for the internet as they pivoted from being a bookshop, really. Um, they originally started like we did, offering easy storage. They basically took the services that they provided for their internal units, business units, and offered that to the rest of the world. Then they offered compute so people could run their code in the cloud. as that quickly became named, and then a bunch of other services. Each one of those, of course, locking you into the Amazon market and platform. Um, each of those steps sort of took people further and further away from this decentralized client, mobile, autonomous internet. And then we've seen that repeated with other services like Apple slowly closing down, even the Android system closing down with mobile, and then new entrants like Cloudflare quickly finding a market where they can do the same one, two, three, four step vendor lock-in. You begin to hitch up the price. Once you have that lock-in, you have closed systems because you don't want to allow competitors into your system, and then you start becoming less and less transparent because there's no business advantage or competition that requires you to keep that open. So we've been reaching out and building tools for developers so that they can own what they build, verify this data, and program their own cloud. They can use Filecoin resources for that. It's built on IPFS. IPFS is an open protocol like the web, so that other providers can also be in that system. Filecoin is just one of many players in the wider IPFS market because it's content addressability. You could jump between all of us. We're constantly in a sort of interplay with those different groups. And the way we try to compete on that is building better protocols and systems so that people can use that. Uh, Many companies have been building on the Filecoin on-chain cloud already. We pre-announced it earlier, actually just last month, thinking about it, and we're going to have our full release in January. It's what we're excited about. It just shows that we've built these sort of fundamental primitives that we're able to expand and grow on that aren't really about the cryptocurrency part of this. We see ourselves very much as a utility token, a general computational primitive, fundamental unit, as it were, that we can build a decentralized web upon along with many partners, not only in our ecosystem, but providing physical infrastructure, providing the communication networks, providing all of these other things that can exist in this parallel and open ecosystem. We have a thriving global community, and this is, I think, one of the things we're most proud of is that, as you can tell, I'm a Brit, but I live in the United States. This is a technology that has primarily grown and prospered further away from those centralized benefits. Here in San Francisco, I see the excess benefits of being right in the center of that map. All of that value that's been extracted from this open commons and concentrated here. The technology is kind of exciting to nerds like me. We definitely have our fans in Silicon Valley. If ever you watch the HBO series, some of the final episodes are based on that kind of fundamental kind of excitement of returning to some of the values that originally excited people about the internet. But most of the practical benefits over and above what the legacy internet provides obviously goes to the edges of the network. And the most take up that we've seen has been in the majority, the global majority. A lot of excitement and pickup in Asia, a lot of developer interest in sovereignty in sub-Saharan Africa and MENA, and we launched in Buenos Aires last month because that's where a bunch of other developer and storage providers congregate. So we're hoping to put the world back into the World Wide Web, and we're hoping to create a decentralized future that is hopefully more resilient, more balanced, and locks in civil liberties in a way that perhaps we should have anticipated when we were building out Web 1.0, but we're going to keep trying and keep following that arc of hopefully technological improvement for all mankind. Okay, that was very highfalutin at the end. I'm happy to talk about kind of the nitty-gritty of this, how we work as a utility token, how that might differ from other blockchain or Web3 systems that you've heard of, and also kind of talk a little bit about the general political uh, 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 I won't say effects, but like one of the things, how this technology may be useful in a public sector context or for members of society who are worried about the current effects of big tech and a centralized internet. So I guess we'll open this up to Q&A.
Thank you very much, Danny, for that informative presentation. That will conclude the presentation section of the session. We will now stop the recording and move into the Q&A. As a reminder,